All right, hey, how's it going, guys? So today I wanted to do a little bit of a different kind of video. I get a lot of questions on Twitch and other places about a lot of material basics, um, and just getting started with the engine in general. I think materials can be rough for some people. Um, so I thought today we'd go over some just basic material features and how to use them. And I think the way that I think about materials as well will be one of the things we go over. Um, and maybe we'll end up making a material function or doing something else. I don't know. I'm just gonna record and see what happens. Okay. First things first. All I've done is in my project is I've just done this. Right click or up here. You can come in here and go new, and then material. And I've just made one already. I called it material underscore masks. We'll be working with masks today. So first things first. Where I think, how do I word this in a good way? First things first, let's cover this, and that is a scalar or a constant, right? So by default, what I did there is I hit 1, but we can also search here and go constant, right? So this is if you need just uh, one thing of data, right? You need one scalar value, one thing, right? So like we could use this for metal. Say our whole object's metal, right? We would plug that in, go 1, and now once the didn't hit it because my num lock is off. Now once this recompiles, it will actually recompile with the thought of it being metal or metallic, right? So, and by the way, I have these up here on. I forgot what the default is for live previewing and connections, but if you ever have issues with your connection not showing up or something like that, generally good to look up here. But anyways, let's look at the difference here, right? So there is that scalar. I'm going to hit 2 for constant 2. Oh. And all you do is you hold the button down and then left click. And then there is a 3 scale const 3. I don't know the best way to put it. I always say scalar 3 or freaking 3 vector because you end up starting thinking about it like that. And as you'll notice, like this, we could actually, so this would be color, RGB, right? And we could use it like that, but you can mix match and things like that. So you needed 2 different data sets. You can use something like that. But that's not where the fun is, right? So engine has something called material instances, and that's where we want to go, right? So let's convert this to a parameter, and this isn't going to be straightforward. I'm going to be probably going over random things because I just wrote down a couple things I want to go over, but not necessarily what I'm going to cover, what I'm going to make, right? So right there, all I did is right click and said make a parameter, right? So this is now a scalar parameter. This is now convert to parameter right there. It's the top option, right? So now we can just say this is color, right? And honestly, right now I don't need this. We don't need the 2 vector. So we're gonna do that. But let's see. Okay, so now we have this, and we basically already know parameters now, right? So if we do this, just apply it to this here, right? So this is now that color. But what if we want more than one color? What's a good way? I did make a video on using custom primitive data, but that might not be necessarily a beginner thing. Let's rename this. We're gonna do blue. And I just like to do mi underscore, but I know it's a material instance. Now let's go to our material instance. You can see that color parameter we made. We can now edit here. We actually don't have to wait for it to recompile either. Just does it the way the engine works, right? So now that's blue. Now for the fun part, and that is how do we get more advanced features and things like that in. And I'm not even necessarily saying advanced because I'm not going to do anything crazy today. But let's say we wanted this more than one color, right? Based on a mask or something. And I think this is what I really want to cover, which is I think a lot of people don't treat the material editor as you're just playing with a value between 1 and 0. Right, so if we have a texture, we'll need a texture coordinate, but also I need a texture sample. And I realize now, I don't even know if I have a, there we go, we got a mask. So we have this as our little material we'll use, right? And we could just do this, plug this in here. But now we're stuck with this, right? Like, what if we don't want it to be that color? And that's where the more math side of this can come in handy. This would be cool if it was 3 different colors. It would show off better. But that's where we can do this, right? So we actually don't need RGB because this is just black and white. But we can plug from here, and we can do something called a lerp. And with black and white, it's lerping back and forth from 0 to 1, right? I know that looks the same, but the nice thing is we can now replace that with something like this. And now anything that was white or near white is going to turn this color. Let's do color 2. Right, so we have to, I just did copy paste, control V, control V, so that's color 2 now. If these share the same names, they'll be the same, right? So if I didn't change that from color, when I change color, both will change. That's just something good to know, but that's why I renamed it, is we can now come in here, let's make it blue. Now all these dark values can be blue. That's a little too strong. Let's tone that down, right? But now we have this completely different thing, and why is that? Because this preview is really just this that we had been looking at, right? We're basically saying, hey, anything that's towards white, do this color. Anything that's towards black, do the other color. And it looks ugly as heck. But this is where the fun stuff can come in handy. So say this actually looked good. I'm sorry, I know it doesn't. But this is the only example texture I have in here. Let's see. Yeah, the other textures won't really work too well. I should have thought this through. Alright, so let's say we want more or less of this, right? So this is where something that I recommend reading the Unreal docs for, and then also the Unreal Learning online learning hub is really great for some of this basic stuff as well. But I just wanted to show some off. So let's say we want this to tile more or tile less. Let's get that texture coordinate, and we would just plug it in here. But obviously we don't want this to just be 1 and 1. We could manually change it in here, but that's kind of like hard changing it. And then I want to show again, like, this is actually a really great example. Everything's a mask at the end of the day. So basically this is just 0 black on this corner to white on this corner. And it's the same way for R, so red, and then freaking B, so green, right? So it's down there. And that's all the text chord is. It's both of those combined, right? And then it ends up getting us stuff. So we can use that. So let's think about this. We can use a multiply. And now, so now I'm going to hit 1 for another scalar. And we're going to do this parameter, and this is going to be called tile thing, right? Obviously 1 multiplied by 0 is 0. So we need to make sure to set a default there. We can set it to be where there's a max slider amount. So like on the other side of this, so if we compile this, our material instance, oh, look at that. Since we had changed that one color, it's changed here. But let's see this tiling now. We'll be able to tile it 10 times. the amount that it was. Now, granted, this is based on the UV space of the model. So it might not always look like this, how it's looking here. Because this has, you can see, here's some UV issues, because it's a sphere. And you can see visually, like, this is us tiling it more or less. So if that's what you want to do, bam, right here. So let's mark that. All I did was highlight these, and then hit C, and we can add a comment. So this is going to be called UVs. This is how we would say you want this to move, right? That's where something like this happens, is panner. We can use that. Panner is feed, and just all this is doing is actually just adding plus one, 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 constantly, right? Is how I like to think of it. We could use that scalar too. I never like making these parameters, because in the end you just get a vector 4 every time. So generally what I like to do to make it a little cleaner, because you can do that, but then you have directions it's not going to use anyways, right? So what we can do, we can take 2 of these, and this is to change the speed, right? So this is going to be X. All right, it's going to be Y, and then what we're going to do is this is where it's kind of fun. I don't know, it's definitely, there's some math involved in this kind of stuff, but I think if you handle it correctly, it's nothing crazy, if that makes sense. When you're doing a lot of basic stuff, you just got to think kind of what it's going on, things like that. So now what we're doing is, instead of me setting it manually here, we're overriding that with these 2 right here. I'm going to set this default value 0.5, 0.5. There you go. Look at that. I think right now what I'm trying to focus on is, like, I think people, a lot of the questions I get a lot of the time, it's people don't like to experiment, right? And then, but also, I think what I notice is a lot of the time people don't realize, like, oh, okay, if we want to change the texture, we change the UVs, right? So we can also change it even further. We could do, there's something like a world align. Granted, this doesn't take a texture in because of what it does, but, so we would have to do this. You would right click and use a texture object, and basically that eliminates it's a different type of object, so it doesn't use UVs or textures or anything, because we're setting it after the fact. And we can actually click in here, and this is a good thing for any of the nodes that you want to understand. I always recommend clicking into them. This one's a little messy. I kind of wish that they would just organize it a little, but you can kind of tell this is actually just doing some appends. And we can just do this, right? So we can say, okay, this is taking absolute world position. This is what the input is if you don't put anything in. It's taking then the texture size and dividing that, and that's what it's going to set this to. So what this does is we could actually, I'm not going to recreate the whole thing, but let's do it. Go boom, 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 and we're going to do on the red green. That way we will have a mask on top, right? And this is why everything's a mask at the end of the day. Is what I like to fit, right? So, and the good thing is, we just plug it right back in the space, right? So this would be, and I'm sorry if you came here hoping for something else. Oh look, it's super tiled, and the reason why is that's why this actually had some math in it. If you notice, converts it, does an absolute. There's a reason for that, and we will see in a second, because it actually needs the texture size. So this is if we had wanted to get this to be the exact size of the texture, so 512, I think, something, right? This kind of just shows you another way we can actually put into a UV. It doesn't always need to be UVs. This will be based on, if we did that, if we saved that, this will be actually based on the world position of the object. See? As an example, we can use something else, right? So the engine comes with things like noise. We couldn't do that. Let's see. Oh, that's an error right there. Why is it an error? Because it's looking for a float 3. That would be something like absolute world position, but I was giving it something else. That we have our own little noise thing, and that's what you got to pay attention to, right? Is little things like that. So now we can change the scale. You can see it works the same exact way. Why? Because this is a mask, right? That's how I want you guys to think about a lot of stuff. Is most of the time it's not textures that we need necessarily, but we're gonna mask something. And that actually, I think that thought process helps a little bit. At least it does for me, because sometimes there's something like a roughness. Like let's take this as our roughness, right? In fact, let's just do this. So roughness, I don't need this noise anymore. That's just to show off another way to generate noise. So noise, right? This noise is just now going to be set to 2 different values that we might not want for noise, right? So one's super super shiny, one's super dull. Now we could do something like this where we say, hey, multiply. And by the way, to make these, all I'm doing is hovering over and double clicking, if that was not obvious. So like we could try to do something like this where we multiply this by 10. I really wish they kept this white. Sometimes it's a little hard to see, right? So like you see that roughness value changing, hopefully, trying to so we could do that to manipulate this. And imagine this is on like your character or something. Sometimes you might import something and the roughness is off. So you could do some math like this. What I like to do though is actually just set something up that's a little, generally, you know, you might have some issues, but it's never something so insane that you got to start multiplying and do power of. You can do that to derive maps from other maps. So like say you only had a color map or something, you can take out one of those channels. And I wish, here, I think I opened my game. You can see where like this is an example map, and we'll create this basically. But like this is, I'm deriving these 3 things. Not the third on this one, but deriving these 3 things from this one channel, right? The reason why is I break it down later, and I'll have to show that. So I wish I imported some textures in here. But so what I like to do, and this is what we're going to recreate, is literally what that node is doing, but outside of it. So now instead of 0, 1, what I want to do is this is where we can use these. This is going to be our max roughness. And I realize this video is a little longer, and we're not necessarily going over, you know, anything crazy, but I hope this helps some people, because these are general questions I get asked. Is like, how do you do this, or how do you do that? So as you can see, it's just super shiny, or at least hopefully you guys can see. The reason why is we never set that max default value. So now what we're working with is this, right? We're working with this again, but we're giving it an option for something, and that is we're giving an option to we're basically making it where we can make that top end higher or lower. And I feel this helps a lot, at least for me, when it comes to like sometimes you might import something from Substance or whatever you're using, and it's just not right, right? It's just it's almost there, but just not 100% there. So like this, you know, I might not like that this is uh harsh lighting, and we might want to even it up. How do we even it up? Well, we make it where that's no longer, we push those values in, right? So we're basically clamping those values, um, but giving ourselves a lot of control over it. So like we can set this max roughness to 2, right? And that's going to make it where everything that was 1 is now 2. Everything that was 0.25, you know, is now bumped up to, let's say 0.5. And then we can do that for the minimum as well, where everything that was close to minimum, let's bring it closer to shiny, right? And we can have more control, and hopefully this could demonstrate. Let's see. We can, this window, lit, buffer, oh, hit opacity, um, roughness right there, right? So this is going to be a good view of what we're doing. So all I'm changing, I'm going to change it off here. We'll change it right here. And thanks for watching this and all that. We're doing different today. Oh, are we not getting the updates? That's kind of interesting. I know it's working. Oh, you know what? Where's our mistake? Our mistake is these are the same as the other thing, so I didn't even realize we're not using the instance right here. So we're not going to see it. That's an important thing. Just to double check what we're using, right? So there we go. Okay. So we can see, I like to visualize things. It might just be me, but it helps me understand things. So I hope this is helping some. So we can see, we could just make it fully rough, blindingly rough. Oh, 1 second. And that's kind of what I wanted to cover for the most part. I hope this helps. I really do. So now, I say, I don't like the 2 colors, right? You know, it needs to spread out more. What do we need to do, right? That's where us knowing that this is just a 0 to 1 value, right? This is what we're working with. At the end of the day, that helps, right? We can do something like divide this. Right? Oh, stop previewing. Change how it's spread out, right? What am I trying to do? This is where I like to just experiment sometimes. I don't even know what I want, right? We just know I want this to change, right? What's a multiply look like? This is what I recommend, and it's not necessarily that I'm trying to do anything, right? But what if we do this? We do that, right? Now we have more distinct values. Did we need to do that to make it? No. Could have probably just done that. Ooh, look at that. We got a whole different value. And this is where I recommend, especially you might not know what everything's doing, to just play around. Right? These honestly end up being, these 3 nodes together, end up being some of the coolest nodes you can have. So you can also then know, because it's, again, just this, is that what I was saying earlier, where we can add to this, but it's just going to add +1, you know, add right on top of it. So we can actually do this too. Say, hey, let's add, but we're going to add just 0.0. Now, I want to clamp this. So that just added 0.01 across the board. So we can use clamp, make sure that it stays between 0 and 1. I like to just do this though. I like to do saturate, because the engine treats it the same as a clamp that's 0 to 1. And why I'm doing this is because we're pushing some of those values above 1 now, right? Because the value that might be fully white here, And this is what was happening here as well. The value that might be fully white, above white, now go into 2, 3. It doesn't actually clamp itself. So we'll get colors, and this is actually good. This is where I can show you something else. Plug it into emissive instead. So if we don't have this, it can actually get brighter. So let's see this, watch. So let's plug in that math we did before. You'll notice these dark spots turn off real time. You'll notice these bright spots. That's actually where it's glowing, because we're using emissive now. But if we use alpha, if we plug the saturate in, the alpha instead, you'll notice it's now even. And the reason why is it's no longer peaking above 1. And we can use that to our advantage, right? So we know that anything after the saturation is between 0 and 1. Granted, this is a vector 3, right, at the end of the day, or a vector 4, I should say, because it has alpha. Well, so we know we could actually do this, where we say multiply by another vector 3 if we wanted, but I'm going to just multiply, because we now know, hey, everything is level here. So now let's multiply everything by 2, and now everything will glow that same amount, right? Rather than just some parts glowing, because some parts are above 1, right? So that's how we can handle certain things. And I realize these are some weird examples. I agree. And yeah, also use something like this. It's actually where I like use this, right? So instead of doing any math at all, we can know, hey, make it 0 to 1 again. This is 1. I want to make 2 negative 1, right? And we can do the math. We could have subtracted. This gives us a little bit of a different result. And we can even do this where we say, hey, plug all this stuff in. And none of this is important, just so you know. Like, if you're, like, trying to follow along with this part, where you're going like, oh, I don't know what he plugged in there. Like, I'm trying to make sure you guys can see, but really I'm just experimenting, right? This is what I think the most important thing at the end of the day is. Because really, these are the results we're given at the end of the day. And I think that's a large texture flow, a large workflow that you can get away with. It's actually, I think what I want to do is show this. Now I realize I was all over the place. I hope this helps some people understand how things work here. But if you haven't, what I recommend is, let me find it so I can tell you, is there's actually a project in the Learn tab called Content Examples. Literally content examples, right? So you would go here in the Epic Launcher, Games Launcher, whatever. Unreal, Learn tab. From here, look around. Okay, content examples right there. Bam. They have an example that is somewhat just like what I'm doing. Yeah, here we go. I'll open it if I can. It works. But this has, besides material examples, because it shows a little more math than I did, like, say, time, you know, multiplied by a sine wave. Okay. Waiting for this content example project to open. Where I'll be pointing you guys, and hopefully you guys learned something. There we go. That's what I wanted. Now I was gonna pulsate back and forth. Filed. There you go. Right? So you can use that to our advantage. Later on, if we want, right? and some other stuff. I'm gonna pause it until the content examples project loads. Never mind that. I decided instead what I want to show is, so now that we have all this set up, what I want to do is, let's say I holding 3, and we're gonna call this color. I'm gonna show something else. Okay. So let's just set that color. Set it to something. Boom, boom. Should be a little glowy. There we go. Let's instead say, hey, how do I change this outside? There is the custom primitive data that I showed that you guys could use if you wanted. What I want to do is let's go back to lit mode. Oh, so bright. And let's just make a material, right? So, and this is, I'm going to show you how to change material as your blueprint. So any of those values that we made, the speed values, whatever, we come in here, have the mask selected. Right, there we go. Let's go to construction script. Now we can just say set material scalar. Right. Now we need to open the scalar. We need to open the material to say, hey, what scalar? Which value do we want to change? Right, let's do tiling. We got to spell it the same way. Same thing. Let's do set vector parameter on materials. Okay. Now let's do color. I named it. Yep. And what we're gonna do is color. All I did was type color. I pulled this, typed color, and it shows up 2 vector. So it's linear color 2 vector math. And I'm just gonna set variable. There we go. Name that color instance editable. There we go. And you're like, okay, what's that do? What do we do there? And we need a variable as well. Just gonna tiling. Right. We should, just so you know, it does. Oh, going crazy. Why is that? It's tiling 0. Let's set a slider range to 0.01 of 10. Fit in the material. All right, now bring this in here. Timey-wimey stuff's gonna get back. All right, plug that. You know what? Let's set our speed to 0 as well, right? So let's start tiling speeds. Set the 0.1. 0.1. No, 0. There we go. Both those changed. But now we want this to change. So expose tiling. Now let's do the color. And we could do this for anything we made a parameter, right? So we could do this for the speed. We could do this for anything we can set here. And there you go. And I realized I wanted to cover more, but this has been forever already. And I want to clean this up a little bit. But I hope at the end of the day, the one thing I showed is the one thing to think about is just think of everything as a scalar value. And, you know, value between 0 and 1. And then get to choose what goes in that, right? That's honestly how. And I think I'll load up a couple other examples like that on the screen and look at the example project, and then that will be it.